Hello, everyone. This is MC Deck Discussions, and I'm Abby Small. And today we have a guest deck. And as you can tell, it is a Spider-Ham deck. So let's go ahead and check it out. So we've got Footballcoach is the designer of this deck, and they had posted this deck on Discord. And at the time, I had been playing my share of Web Warrior decks, and I took a look at this deck and thought it was very cool. And Footballcoach has a fantastic write-up of this deck, so I highly recommend reading that exactly to see how the gameplay works. But I'll, make some comments on that myself. The deck is called Spider's Akimbo, 40-card deck, leadership, and as you can see, like I said, it is a Web Warrior deck. So we have the Web of Life and Destiny in here. So it doesn't run any cards other than Captain America, who comes with the deck. All the rest of these are, in fact, Web Warriors. So we have Ghost Spider, Spider, Spider-Man Hobie Brown, Spider-Man Peter Parker, Spider-Man Otto Octavius, and Spider-Man 2099. Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Man Peter Parker are the heart of the deck that kind of the what you might call the Spider-Ham engine, at least once you also get Web of Life and Destiny out. So let's look at, first of all, let's get a reminder about Spider-Ham himself, right? 2 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense, and has the cartoon and Web Warrior traits, has 12 hit points, a hand size of 5 on the hero side, and then each tune counter on Spider-Ham can be spent as if it were a wild resource, which is related to his Spider Nonsense ability, which is this response: after Spider-Ham takes any amount of damage, place 1 tune counter on him. And then a couple other key cards that we have in here are Across the Spider-Verse, pretty typical card in this deck to get Web Warriors out of your discard pile. But Noble Sacrifice is a really nice addition here. So you can discard an ally you control, heal damage from your hero equal to that ally's printed hit points, and give your hero a tough status card. So this card is used in conjunction with, getting rid of some of your other cards. Of course, if you have Across the Spider-Verse available, you could always, use Noble Sacrifice on Spider-Man 2099 or Spider-Man Peter Parker. But for the most part, they're not really meant to be targets for that. It's meant to be Noble Sacrifice used on maybe Hobie Brown. Hobie Brown's pretty ideal for that. But you could also use it with the others and be able to get Spider-Ham some of his hit points back, since he will be taking his share of damage. And then we have 7 resource cards in here, the 3 usual doubles: Energy, Genius, and Strength. But we also have 2 copies of the Power in All of Us, and 2 copies of the Power of Leadership. And this is a really important note here. So notice there are 2 Power of Leadership, but we only have 1 card that those can be used for. But that's an extremely important card. And once you get this deck rolling, the Power of Leadership should definitely not go to waste, because once Spider-Man 2099 is out, he should be coming back to your hand very regularly. And so his Power of Leadership ends up becoming a really great card for this deck. So don't discount the Power of Leadership and think that it's a bad choice. It's not at all, because if you want to get, since Spider-Man 2099 is the key element, one of the key elements of that runs the engine of this deck, you want to be able to get him back out easily, and the Power of Leadership helps to do that. As well as Spider-Ham's own ability, where he's able to take damage and provide resources as well. All right, but we have other cards that also help with that. So first of all, there's Avengers Mansion, with all these resource cards out, a lot of times you can get Avengers Mansion out pretty easily. Same with Helicarrier, and we have 2 team building exercise. Typically, I would only get 1 of these out. There was 1 game. I played 4 games with this deck, by the way. I played, and so one of those games I did get 2 copies of Team Building Exercise out, but usually I would just get 1. But having 2 of them was really nice, because you were highly likely to get at least 1 of them out. So typically in a typical game, I would get 1 Team Building Exercise, Helicarrier, and Avengers Mansion. So only 1 game did I not get Avengers Mansion out. And of course, Web of Life and Destiny we already mentioned, and we have the Triskelion to increase your ally limit by 1. Sometimes I would get that out, sometimes I wouldn't. There were sometimes wouldn't really matter, but other times when it could become a really great card, especially if you're going to use Noble Sacrifice to get rid of, one of your allies. So having the Triskelion out can be really nice for that. And then over in our upgrades, we have Clarity of Purpose. So one of the best cards ever for Spider-Ham, right? Attached to a friendly character, you're going to attach it to Spider-Ham, max 1 per character. Hero resource, exhaust this card and deal 1 damage to attached character, generate a wild resource. So you're able to generate a wild resource, which will then put a wild resource on Spider-Ham to be used on another card. From what from the way I've played it and the way I've heard that it needs to be played, is you can't then immediately use that resource that comes out for the same card that you're using for this one. So if you already have a wild resource, one of the tune counters on Spider-Ham, you could use that one in addition to Clarity of Purpose, and then use one other and then use whatever other resources you want, what have you. So those could be used, but the new one that comes on, you can't use until your next, until the next card that you're playing. Okay, and then Downtime. This is a cool little card to be added to this. This is the first time I've ever actually used this card in a deck. I think I might have early in my play. It's been a lot of years of playing Marvel Champions, so maybe early on I used it, but I hadn't used it in a really long time. So a lot of you might not have either. So it's your alter ego gets +2 recovery, and Spider-Ham, let's look at his alter ego side, right? He has a recovery of 5 to begin with. So that would jump it up to 7, and a 6 hand size on his alter ego side. And he has this ability, Cartoon Power Response. After you make a basic recovery, place 1 tune counter on Peter Porker. So that's always nice when you can do that too. So it ends up being even nicer if you can get that extra 2, so you don't have to necessarily, try to heal twice, though you do have a benefit from it. Okay. All right. And then we also have Endurance. So his hit points, as we mentioned earlier, was 12. This pumps those up to 13, gives him that little extra margin of safety on top of that, which makes it really nice for him to keep taking hits, right? Because we do want him to take hits. But in particular, we want to take hits in a specific way. So at the beginning of the game, a lot of times you're going to take hits directly from the villain. But as the game progresses, you actually want to allow minions to come out, unless they're ones that maybe have guard that you have to make sure to get rid of. Perhaps you have some here and there that have specifically hefty attacks, like maybe a 3 attack. Even then, you might want to think about just keeping them out. And you keep those minions out because they become a resource for you. So each time one of those minions does damage to you, you end up putting another, tune counter on Spider-Ham and building up those resources. Plus, you have 5 recovery and, 7 recovery if Endurance is out. And so when you go to alter ego side, and you can go to alter ego side pretty readily with this deck, even though it doesn't have additional cards that can end up confusing the villain. He does have 3 copies of Swinging Web Pick. And so that does 6 damage to an enemy, and you confuse that enemy. And as I said, I played this against Magneto, who starts off the game with Steady. But this deck is very good at playing against Magneto and making sure it can really get rid of the side schemes that Magneto has. That once you get rid of, basically you have 3 side schemes to get rid of, and once you get rid of those 3 side schemes, then Magneto no longer ends up having Steady, and he can be confused. And so this deck, Spider-Ham, can really do that readily with the Swinging Web Pigs, and especially if you end up getting, so as a reminder here, he has 2 thwart. So he's really nice for this because he has 2 thwart in the beginning of the game, but as soon as you get out organic webbing, that gives him +1 thwart. And then, and plus, you can exhaust organic webbing and remove one of those tune counters from Spider-Ham, and then you can ready Spider-Ham. And then he'll gain the aerial trait, which you don't really care about in this case, but you can ready him. So this gives him 3 thwart, and you can ready him, so he can get rid of 3 thwart on his own. So he becomes a thwart, a thwarting machine once that gets into play. And you have, in one of my games, by the way, and this game can completely win and even dominate, even if you don't get the Web of Life and Destiny out. I had one game where I couldn't get it out. It was at the end of my deck, and then just when I was about to get it in hand, what's the name of the... And then Magneto brought out that card that steals like 6 of your cards. It's a side scheme. And it stole the last 6 cards and took away Web of Life and Destiny. So I never ended up playing Web of Life and Destiny, but I still ended up completely controlling the game. not needing it. So why is that? So, and that's because these interactions are really cool. Sure, way better when you have the Web of Life and Destiny and you get this machine that's running, that's really drawing you a bunch of cards. But on top of that, this interaction between Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Man Peter Parker is a really cool one. So let's suppose that you have, it's actually described really well over here. So maybe I should just go ahead and walk us through that, right? So let me go ahead and show you that here. All right, so here's the situation, right? So suppose you start your turn with Peter Parker, Spider-Man Peter Parker out, and Miguel. Miguel is Spider-Man 2099. So those two are out. And suppose each of them has 1 damage. Okay, so you use Miguel to kick another one of your Web Warriors back to your hand, right? So that means you're actually attacking. Most of the time you're attacking if you're trying to finish off the villain, but you could be thwarting too if that's necessary. Okay, so you go ahead and attack or thwart with Miguel, and that'll kick one of your Web Warriors back to your hand, right? So it could be Peter Parker, but in this case, we're going to suppose actually we have another one of the Web Warriors out. Okay. All right. So ideally, Hobie is an ideal card for that. One of the ideal cards for this, right? So you can end up dealing a bunch of possibly a bunch of damage to the villain at the same time. Okay. So you kick that back to your hand, and then if you have the Web of Life and Destiny out, you're going to draw a card. Okay. All right. Then you can use Peter. He goes. And Peter Parker will then ready Miguel. So Peter Parker has that ability, right? So when he attacks or thwarts, he readies a Web Warrior character. So you can then use Peter Parker to say attack, and then that readies Miguel. Well, then Miguel can go ahead and take his turn again and go back to your hand, right? The goal is to get Miguel back to your hand, most of those turns. Okay. Now you can replay Miguel. Typically for a discount. What kind of discount? Well, we have team building exercise, we have helicarrier, we have the power of leadership, right? So all of these cards, and of course the double resources. Okay, and there are 2 of these team building exercises, so you're likely to get have one of those out. Okay, right? Then when Miguel comes back in, you can then go ahead and attack with Miguel and put Peter Parker back in your hand. Then you can replay Peter Parker using Spider-Ham's plentiful wild resources, right? So that's also available, and even be able to possibly replay Hobie for a discount, right? And then you have the possibility of some of those things happening again, right? So, and if you have Across the Spider-Verse, you have other opportunities as well in order to get some of your characters out, right? So some of your allies out. So this kind of cycle is just so cool in this deck, and it's specifically easier to do in Spider-Ham's deck because he can really accumulate these wild resources. Okay? So I highly recommend trying out this deck. Now, if you're playing against Magneto, you don't maybe always have the opportunity to have as many resources as you would like. But even with playing against Magneto, it worked quite well. And like I said, I actually really dominated Magneto with this deck all 4 times, the 2 times the standard and 2 times an expert. Be prepared for another video dropping tomorrow, by the way. In that video, it was my last play against Magneto, and I went ahead and recorded my last turn using dragon cards. So so I will have that there, and I'll make sure actually I'll do it in this video too, but in that video I will be linking Solo Marvel Champions video where he did a tutorial on how to use dragon cards. So I figure I'm going to be probably using that here and there to do some demo rounds or a demo turn with some of the decks that I'm showing, or maybe I'll make it a regular thing. It depends on if people end up liking it or not. But in any case, I will have that coming out tomorrow. So you'll see one hand of play, the very final turn with the Spider-Ham deck to kind of get an example of how it could play out. Okay, that's it for today's video. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a good one, everybody.